All right, cows listeners. If you're listening to Jen Julius, Inspiration and Information. And today I have Lisa Safran on, and we are going to have a pretty jam-packed interview. It's going to be pretty intense, so put your seatbelt on. But to start, I would love, Lisa, for you to say hello and introduce yourself a little bit. Tell all these cows listeners who you are and what you do and why you're such a big deal.
Thanks, Jen. Wow, I love being called a big deal. That's awesome. And hello, cows listeners. It's so great to be here in Occidental. What a beautiful place. I felt like I was going on vacation driving here today.
I know. I love it. I love it.
And I'm really thrilled to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm a woman.
Yay.
Yay.
I love it.
Woman. And I started my own business a few years ago, and it was a result of really an improvisational journey, which I think we'll be getting into as we continue here today. So I'll start with that. It's an improvisational journey, and I'm going to invite the listeners to come on this journey and start to think about what kind of improvisational journey do they want to go on.
Perfect. So can you actually define or explain improv a little bit for people that maybe aren't so familiar with that term?
Absolutely. Often people associate improvisation with the television show Whose Line Is It Anyway, which, very funny, people have to be, comedic. When we think about applied improv, which is what I'm part of, an industry called applied improv, it's taking the principles of improv. So improv is being spontaneous, thinking on your feet. And when it's done in a theatrical form, it can often be very funny. When we think about applied improv, using it for learning, using it for education or training, it's all about being present, being right in the moment, responding to what's right in front of you, and responding positively, seeing how you can look at what's possible instead of what's impossible.
I love that. Okay. Yeah. And so what the name of your business is?
Improv Consultants. Go figure. Yeah.
Perfect.
Right.
And so just if you could give us, if you don't mind, a little description then of what your business offers to people, like how it supports people.
Yeah, absolutely. Basically, it's threefold. One of the things I do is I help individuals around developing presentation skills. And sometimes it's not even presentation like I want to go out and give a talk, but I want to feel like I can present myself to the world.
Sure.
A lot of people that come to me are very dynamic, business owners, executives, but there might be something that's making them feel like they're holding back just a little bit. And so we look at how can we take more risks in a safe way, of course, so that we can go out there and be dynamic in a way that's attractive and supports us in moving relationships forward, business deals forward, whatever it is that they're working on. So that's one fold, is working with individuals. And then the second thing I do is I work with schools. I work with teachers. I'm a former teacher, and I use improvisation to build literacy in the classroom, and I also use it for social development and emotional health for preschoolers, and I do staff development for teachers using improvisation.
I bet teachers have to improv a lot, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God, on a daily basis.
I have my master's is in counseling with my school counseling credential. Mm-hmm. So I've done a lot of classroom guidance when I was doing all my internships, and I did a lot of voc ed for one of the schools that I was school counselor for. And it's so true how you really have to act like you know what you're doing, even when you don't, especially when those questions come at you sideways.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes the beauty is being able to say, though, I don't know, and I'll get back to you. And that comes from, being confident that
and
you don't
humble.
have to, you don't have to have all the answers, right? And so then thirdly, what I do is I work with businesses around developing healthier teams, communication, and leadership development as well, and all using improv. So imagine a big umbrella that says improv, and then under it, individuals, schools, and businesses.
Perfect. Wow. Yeah. All right. I love it. Thank you for describing that too. Well, I think at this point, I'd actually love to just kind of jump in a little bit. It's funny. I was just thinking about this popped in my head. How did we meet? Because we clicked real fast and we got along real good. Right. But I can't even pinpoint because it's just like, oh, of course Lisa's on my show and of course we get along.
It feels like we've known each other forever.
Yeah, I totally don't remember how we met though.
All right. So it was a weekend at a training. We won't name the trainers, where it was like they were showing us all how to be better business owners.
Oh my gosh,
and
that's where we met.
You were sitting on my left.
Yes.
And at one point, I think I
was a total wreck that day.
I wasn't much better, I don't think. Right? And I think at one point we connected, and maybe we all had lunch together, and you mentioned that you sometimes look for guests for your show.
Yeah.
And
then we realized we're both from Sonoma, Marin County.
Right. Yeah. We're both from this area. We also shared some other things in common.
Because we were in San Francisco Francisco or something, right?
That
training was in
South
San Francisco.
maybe, like all the way in the south.
Oh my gosh, that was okay. So that's crazy because I actually remember that was like the second weekend in July.
Yeah.
And July was one of the hardest months of my life.
Right.
Literally.
Right.
And that is crazy because I was doing a lot of improv during that weekend of keeping my act together, playing as best as I could, trying to be very
Showing
present
up.
as much as possible, showing up. Yeah. And it's fun. I need to go back to that training so I can actually absorb more of it. But that's crazy that's when we met. And it's so perfect now that it's culminating. I'm not even kidding. For anyone that's listening and thinks we're totally joking and like faking it and lying right now about not remembering, I really did not remember where I met her because it's just so normal.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, I think we met that weekend and then immediately we decided to connect. And then we went to lunch and you picked like the best place to eat in Santa Rosa that was perfect for the kind of food that I like. And I was like, oh my God, she totally knows me.
I love it.
It was great.
I love it. Yeah. And then I just had Mickey Griffith on not too long ago.
Oh my gosh. I love Mickey.
Yeah. So that's what else Lisa and I have in common is we're also both in different BNI groups, Business Networking International. And Mickey was on. We talked a little bit about what BNI is. I'm actually having one of the bigwigs, I guess you'd say, in the local BNI area, Don Lyons, on March 6th.
Oh, wonderful.
So we'll be talking about how your behavioral style affects your referability. That'll be awesome.
That's excellent. Well, I want to say another plug for Mickey, which is besides BNI, I actually take classes with him at the Referral Institute.
Which is what we talked about too. Yeah.
Right. And it's Certified Networker. And it's helped me so much in being able to define what I do and know how to build those relationships.
Sure.
So I just... Yay for the Referral Institute and Mickey Griffith.
Yeah, no, we had a really nice interview the other week, and we're very fortunate to have as many beautiful resources, especially around the realm of small business development in this area. And I didn't really realize it until I got more enveloped in it and I started building my own business to then see how many resources we do have available to us. And I feel that we're very fortunate for that. So
I wish I had started my business living in Marin. I started it living in San Francisco, and the difference between how I got started in the city and then moving over here and the support I've gotten over here has been it's amazing. Yeah, I mean,
that's great
partly
to hear.
Maybe it's because I was more open,
open
and realizing I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure,
I need help. Right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And thank goodness there was help around. Like it's been wonderful, and Mickey's been a super support and a real, like, I would say, mentor even at times.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We love him.
Yeah, we love him.
Perfect. So I just realized as I was preparing to say, okay, let's transition over and hear about your story. Let's just get down to it. Okay. I actually want to give a little bit of a cautionary note that Lisa's story is rather intense. And I kind of just want to let listeners know to totally feel okay to stop listening at any point if you notice that you're getting triggered by anything that she's sharing, if this has a personal resonance with you, if it's something that's making you uncomfortable. I mean, we're not going to be like talking super crazy, but I mean, it's definitely powerful and it definitely can stir some people up. I know it really stirred me up pretty intensely the first time I heard. So I just kind of want to give a disclaimer? That disclaimer before we start. So we have 20 minutes before I have to do my 9 o'clock announcements. Is that
I can definitely
okay?
do it within that time.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just hand it over to you and just whatever you feel safe sharing today. I know that your story can have a really big impact and can really be utilized in the concepts we're trying to touch on today, which is the whole ability to take trauma to triumph, and what that means and what that looks like. And I think that everything that I do in my business is about resilience and taking struggles and turning them into strengths. And so much of what you do is similar with, creating possibility, not impossibility, and really allowing ourselves to grow and develop even after hardship. So I really appreciate you even being willing to share such a powerful story that really, I think, embraces the concept of really being able to go through something exceptionally challenging or traumatic and being able to still bounce back from it and perhaps even gain something positive from it. So I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, one of the things I want to sort of preface before I get into this is I want to highlight an improv exercise, and it's called Story Spine. And this was created by Ken Adam. He's in the East Bay. And Story Spine was created as a tool to support improvisers in developing full-length productions, full-length improvised stories. And the way it works is you have a frame. It's a framework. So once upon a time, da-da-da-da-da, and every day, da-da-da-da-da. So that's sort of, we set it up. Like, this is what happened all the time. Once upon a time, I was a teacher. I was living in the East Bay. I was married. And every day, I taught third grade. So I'm setting up what we call the platform, right? This was the day in, day out. I was married. I'd go to work. I would teach third graders. I'd come home. I was tired. That was what I did. Sure. Until one day, this is the next part in the story spine, I went through a divorce. And we had been together 10 years. And while it was a mutual decision, it was still very painful because I think the pain came from this place of holding on to what you want something to be instead of really seeing what it is. And thankfully we were very amicable with each other. That was not really traumatic, but yet it is life-changing. And as a result, and because of that, the story spine says, and because of that, I went to Thailand. I had gone to Thailand 2 times previously, once with my ex-husband. I was a rock climber back then. And in Thailand, there's just great rock climbing in the province of Krabi, and specifically on this beach called Railay Beach. And then I went back another time by myself. So now I'm through a divorce, and it's December of 2004, and I go with a friend over to Thailand. And, I'm sort of doing still what I'm used to doing. I'll go to Thailand again. Yay, I'll go rock climbing. I always go rock climbing. And it was on December 26, 2004, when I was on the beach in Thailand rock climbing. And it was a very busy day that day. It was Boxing Day. There was tons of tourists. I remember feeling fairly annoyed because there was a lot of yelling and noise, and I had sort of this territorial thing of, this is my Thailand beach. I come here all the time. Who are all these tourists? And I think partly because I'd always gone in the summer when it was quiet, and this was Christmas time and, the holidays when everyone was traveling. And I had just come down from the rock and pulled the rope down, and all that noise seemed to vanish, and it became silent. And I remember turning and looking out at the sea, which was maybe about 10 to 15 feet away from me. And I saw that every single person that had been making noise was silent. And it's like this, you take a second and you increase it, and it feels like everything's in slow motion. Yeah. And I was looking out at the ocean, and I saw these 3 boats. They're called longtail boats. And I heard some yelling coming from the boats. And out in the horizon, I saw a long white strip of what looked like foamy water. And then, breaking the silence, someone screamed, "Run." And everyone started running, and the 3 boats smashed into a million pieces. And I started running, and I honestly had no idea what I was running from. I just felt complete terror, lost. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where my friend was because we had split up earlier in the day. She was a writer and I was a climber, and she was going to a cafe to write and I was going to climb. And so there was this feeling of just total being disassociated from everything you know. Yeah. And I started to run one direction, but that's towards another beach. So I didn't know whether that was a good idea. So I ran back to where I'd come from, then grabbed my backpack. I remember bumping into somebody who was still belaying somebody in the wall. Wow. And stopping to apologize. And she was like, "Don't worry, just go, go." And again, so there's this alarm of like, you have to run. And yet I didn't know what I was running from. So I ran what was seemingly inland, but it really is towards another beach. And as I got halfway, I started to see people running towards me from this other beach. And listeners, this would be the point when I'm going to get a little bit more graphic. So anyway, so people were running towards me, and some were covered with blood. And I saw one man holding his eye with blood pouring through it, and someone else holding his leg. Now, what I later found out, of course, is that I was experiencing the Southeast Asia tsunami that killed 250,000 people that day. And still chokes me up. Sorry.
You're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, so I was, I was one of the really, really lucky ones, and the area that I was in wasn't as drastically hit as many other places, but the result of going through that, and I'll share a little bit more about that experience in a moment, was this profound feeling of not being part of something. Yeah. It was sort of like I'm running inland. I realized, don't go any further because these people are coming from what looks like even more danger than what I've just left from. Yeah. And at that point, I saw across from me on this path, there was like a trail that led up into the hills. So I started to go up that trail. And I ended up being up at the top for quite a while. And from the top, it looked like just a peaceful day down on the beach. You couldn't see anything amiss at all. And as I was up there, I started to learn through translation. Someone had a walkie-talkie. We were getting little bits of news that it had been a tidal wave earthquake. That's what they were calling it. And that it was recommended that you not go down to the lower ground. But I didn't know where my friend was. And I felt like I can't stay up there forever. I had been up there at this point 4 hours, just wandering around, not feeling part of. Now, how do you not feel part of a tsunami? How do you not feel part of a natural disaster? But that was part of my mechanism. There was something inside of me, and it had been there for many, many years, my whole life, where I always felt like I was having to reinvent or reclaim a seat somewhere or feel part of a new group. Like I never quite felt like I fit in. Feeling less than, right? There was all that stuff that got triggered in this moment of a natural disaster. And I had actually been having quite a successful life at that point. I mean, I have a master's in education. I'd been teaching. I'm a master teacher. I was part of a, very healthy community, no drinking, no drugs, all that stuff. Like I'm a very healthy person overall. But in that moment, I felt like I was the most alone person in the world, and that everyone else knew how to go through a tsunami except me. It's sort of this ego, self-centered, it's all about me, natural disaster moment.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And what I started to strive to do in that same day is to build community. It became essential for me to bring people together. I didn't know that. It wasn't like I thought, I've got to build community. Yeah. But there was something that started working inside of me that said, that I didn't want to be alone, and I didn't want anyone else to be alone going through this experience. So I started to make my way down from that hill, and on my way down, I had to keep stopping because I actually have a fear of walking down steep hills. Wow. It's like the fear of losing control. Sure. And I can hike up. I jumped out of a plane, but apparently walking down a hill is not so fun, right? And this was another moment where I felt like I was touched by someone's life, and I also felt like I had impact, where a man was brought up to this resting area where I was. He was covered with wounds, and I found out that he had lost his wife minutes earlier in this wave. And he was in shock. He couldn't speak. He was shivering. It was 80 degrees out, and he was shivering. I had this white mesh stretchy climbing shirt, and I gave it to him, and I had a little bit of water that someone else had given me, and I gave him that. And I just had this moment of sitting with him in silence, just putting my arm on his back, but then recognizing maybe culturally, should I be touching him? But wanting to make him feel as safe as he could be. And after a while being with him, other people came to him, and I then made my way down with another group of people back to the beach. And we walked across the beach, which was desolate at this point, and made our way then back up to another high area. And when we got up there, it was like a scene out of a concert. Tons of people on the grass. It looked like they were literally waiting for, the Rolling Stones, someone big to come. Wow. And everyone was looking in the same direction, which was the sea. Yeah. Like waiting for me, an unseen monster, to come back and either claim them or maybe give back what people had lost. And I was, again, looking for my friend. I hadn't found her yet. Wow. And I remember going up to the restaurant and, seeing tons of people looking like it was almost celebratory. They're drinking, they're talking, but there was a hushed feeling to the talking. Even though, there was drinking going on, it was almost like this quietness around it. And I asked for water. They said they were out of water. I thought about maybe this would be a really great time to have something to drink. Yeah. And then I just sort of thought, no, I'll just have some juice. And so I had some juice. And at that moment I turned around and there was my friend. And she had a completely different experience. But the bottom line is we ended up connecting. She had been sort of adopted by 2 traveling teachers. Wow. And had been with them during the crisis. And I, meanwhile, had adopted 2 other climbers who had sort of evacuated to this high area and gotten a hotel. And then I found 2 other guys that were totally traumatized who had actually helped evacuate some of the dead. And so the 6 of us, I think it ended up being 3, 4, 5, maybe 7 of us, 8 of us, all ended up staying together for the night. Wow. And that was the beginning of what felt like having community and not being in isolation is going to be an essential part of my life. And sometimes when you're a teacher in the classroom, you teach in isolation. You can have community, and ideally you have teams that you work with. But often there's so much stress and there's so much, I do it this way, you do it that way, that often you do end up teaching in isolation. Your door closes, and then you do what you do. And so the only community is with the kids that are in the classroom. And I realized, for me, working with adults and having this moment of working with adults was really powerful. Now, again, none of that was conscious. I think it was just hitting me at a more visceral gut level. Yeah. And it started to prompt me in thinking about, all right, what am I not doing with my life that I want to do? I had immense survivor guilt. Like, why didn't I die?
Yeah.
You know, 250,000 people. And I ended up doing some post-trauma therapy. And what I learned is that survivor guilt is the result of not living the life that you want to live. So the question became, well, what kind of life do you want to live? And I thought, well, you know, I'm a musician. I've always wanted to do something with my music. I was a self-taught musician, and I created lots of different songs, but I'd never produced anything. So that was on my list. I want to produce an album.
Wow.
The second thing was I had lived overseas as a kid. I lived in Nairobi, and my dad was a consultant to the Peace Corps when I was 6, 7, and 8. So we lived in Nairobi, and I had it in my system that I wanted to live overseas, and I wanted to work and live overseas. So I wanted to do that as well. So that, you know, number 2, live overseas.
Yeah.
And the third thing was I wanted to create a business or a career that blended my creativity with my master's in education. Sure. I had been an actress, a stand-up comic. Stand-up comedy is not fun when you're not funny. Very painful life. That's all I'm saying. And that's not what I wanted to do. But I wanted to do something where I could use humor, or I could use my theatrics, and also use the fact that I have this master's in education. Sure. And that just seemed insurmountable. Like, oh my gosh, how am I absolutely going to put that together? Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah. So the easiest thing was actually moving to Thailand. Within 2 months of surviving the tsunami, I went to a job fair in Boston. International School Services places qualified, credentialed teachers around the world. Whoa. And I basically did 10 interviews in 24 hours. I had 2 solid job offers, one from Beijing and one from Thailand. Whoa. And I took the offer in Thailand and moved there in the summer of 2005. Whoa. So within months of surviving the tsunami, I sold my condo, sold my car, sold my stuff, put a few boxes at friends' houses, and then moved overseas to Thailand.
I mean, you were definitely on the same page with the emotions involved in a story like that, and I really appreciate you sharing it, because it's powerful, I think, when we can really offer the vulnerability of what we've been through to people, to try and just share our story, you know, and see how we can connect and support others. So thank you for that. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Inspiration and Information with Jen Julius, and I have Lisa Safran here in the studio with me. Tell us real quick again who you are, what you do.
Yeah, my name is Lisa Safran, and I have a business called Improv Consultants. And what we do is we help people develop ease and confidence around public speaking, and then I also do trainings with teachers and businesses. And so this was part 2, right? So I think there were 3 things, right?
Yeah,
3 things that I wanted to do. So I've survived this massive, tsunami, and I knew that there were 3 things. And the first thing was I wanted to live and work overseas, and check, did that. I came home from Thailand in 2007, and I was talking to a friend and talking about my music and how I really wanted to do some stuff with it. She said, you know, my husband is a guitarist. Why don't the 2 of you get together? Instead of saying, oh, yeah, no, that's not what I was thinking. It's like, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. Right? Again, let's say yes whenever possible.
Boom.
Right. So Chris and I started playing together, and we then formed a band. My sister joined in, started doing harmony. We produced an album, and so the album was produced in 2010. Cool. So we basically played coffee shops and did our own little gigs all around the San Francisco area from about 2007 until 2010. Cool. Now, at the same time, I had started to really think about what had I done differently in my classroom in Thailand versus what I had done in the United States. And one of the things was I had started to apply improv more directly with my students in Thailand. Many of my students were second, third language users. Wow. So to have to then learn in English, speak in English is pretty huge, right? Anytime you have to speak in a second language, there's a lot of fear of not sounding right or making mistakes. One of the great things about improv is we celebrate mistakes. You know, we say, you know, yes, find the joy in failure. And now if you can start to find the joy in failure, you can accomplish so much because you're not as scared of being perfect anymore.
Yes.
So what I noticed,
I love that.
yeah, right. So what I noticed with my kids in the classroom is we're doing improv. They're willing to speak English more. They're willing to try. This translates to then having deeper conversations, being able to relate what we're doing in improv to maybe stories that we've read. And therefore, when I came home, I thought, you know, maybe that's the business. Maybe it's about finding ways to support teachers in helping their kids love literacy, love language arts, love reading, love writing. As a teacher, one of the things that happens, it's writing time, right? Okay, boys and girls, so, it's writer's workshop. And it's 100 hands go up. I don't know what to write about. I don't know what to write about. Right. And therefore, you're spending the next 45 minutes during writer's workshop running around to every single student, helping them figure out what to write about. When I started to use improv in my class and did different improv story games, like specifically Story Spine, which the ending of that is and because of that, and because of surviving the tsunami, I went on a journey to really start doing things I absolutely loved that would have impact in the world, right? Impact for me and impact in the world. Yeah. Until finally, I created this business, right? That's the next part, until finally. And ever since that day, so that's the last part of the Story Spine. And ever since that day, every single day has been about how can I make this happen for me and happen for others. Wow. I'm not totally altruistic. This is also about me having fun and doing what I love, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But it is, when I do what I love, I often impact others and help them do what they love too. Right. So I started to really develop these programs for kids. And that's when I wrote my book, Reading and Writing Come Alive, using improvisation to build literacy and developing programs for teachers. And I presented at conferences. Actually, let me back up.
Okay.
I hadn't written the book yet. I started to apply to present at conferences, and a conference said yes. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. They want me to present.
Sure.
I don't know if I'm an expert enough. I better write a book. And that's what led me to writing the book. And so I published that in 2010. And I was leading a training at the Green School in Bali. I had been hired to lead a staff development for the teachers in Bali. And a woman in the community said, hey, I hear about this great improv work you're doing with the teachers. Can you do that with me? Now, again, my first reaction is to say, no, that sounds weird. Improv for one? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah. And because of the training of trying to say yes when possible, I said, sure, what did you have in mind? Let me be curious about what this person's asking for and not just say no before I have evidence, right? Yeah. And she said, well, I understand that improv can help me maybe feel unstuck, that it's all about being playful. And I feel like I need more play in my life. I'm this business owner. I own an export business, 25 years. I'm miserable. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I don't know how to get out. And I thought, I think I can help you. And so I spent the next several days researching online, best practices coaching, looking at different improv games. How can I use improv to help one person? Yeah. And I developed a program, co-created it really with this fabulous client, of supporting her in getting sort of free from her limiting beliefs. Yeah. Which I think is a lot of the stuff you do as well, Jen, right? And like really working with people to support them around that. And so that's how the third part of the business came. It was, I was doing the school programs. I'm now doing the individual programs. Then a guy who owned a tech firm in San Francisco said, hey, can you do this with us? And, what's the answer? The answer is sure. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. And every time I've been scared. Every single time I've been scared when I've done the new thing. And I have people I can call to support me around that. Yeah. My family is amazing. Yeah. My sister, my brother, my dad and mom, amazing support. I have a community of people that I can call when I'm in fear and talk to them. Oh my gosh. Like the big milestone was I got a huge training beginning of January, and it was larger than anything I've ever been hired to do before. And I had amazing experts that I could call on that have done applied improv many years longer than I, who have dealt with corporations in a way that I haven't. I've been more in education and individuals. Sure. And so I had that support of others, their expertise. Yeah. It's like, I think it's about always staying teachable, right? I don't have all the answers. Yeah. I'm following this path. It's sort of like, follow the yellow brick road, and sometimes I get like really great people that support me, and sometimes it's been challenging, but I'm just going to keep following the yellow brick road and say yes to things and hopefully help people recognize where their yeses are in their life. Wow. Yeah.
Well, and a lot of what you kind of remind me of are two things. I actually just wrote a blog about fear this week. Ooh. And so when you're talking a little bit about how sometimes when we get these opportunities or something presents itself, or sometimes if we're just doing something that's incredible, we often then kind of freak out a little bit, Mm-hmm. And I was talking in the blog about how normal that is just part of the growing process, because our brain likes to stay the same. doesn't really like a lot of change. It likes to be in its little comfort zone, And Stephen Campbell and I have talked about that a lot in our workshop that we did, and he shares that a lot on his show here too. And as I apply that to fear, it kind of makes sense because often I believe that when we're what I describe as up-leveling, like when we're really growing as a person, and as I describe it in like the concepts of energetic levels a lot, when we're raising to a higher vibration or higher energetic level, a lot of times a lot of fear pops up and we get scared, because we're changing and we're not staying the same. We're not staying what our brain might think is being safe. Even if we know that where we're heading is what's in our highest good, there's still kind of this misalignment temporarily of like where we were and where we're going. And I think that that's sometimes what makes it so hard to say yes all the time, because it's like, who am I? And also I think that's common. I almost see you as a bit of a coach like myself. And I don't think I've heard you describe yourself that way, but it totally sounds like that's a lot of what you do.
Yeah. Others have described me that way. Okay. So now I apparently am a communications coach.
There you go.
Because why not, right?
Why not?
That's my role for today.
Yeah, perfect. Take it. And what I kind of call is like the coach's dilemma is like how we're always still facing, no matter how great we are, how much we've done, who we've worked with, there's still sometimes this little thing that pops up that says, who the heck are you? What do you know? Like, how do you think you're an expert on that? How do you have the right to coach on that or talk about that? And I was sharing that with my partner the other day, and he's just like, what the heck are you talking about? That's so stupid. And I'm like, you don't get it. It's a coach's issue, But it's true, because I think that sometimes it's also kind of the healer's dilemma. I've noticed that sometimes any form of healer will say, how can I possibly have the right to support people in this way? Like, how do I really know what I'm doing or what I'm talking about, or, how to understand what they've been through, and it's sometimes challenging for us to pop back out of that and feel empowered again, because sometimes it is kind of overwhelming, it's a huge honor, but it's also kind of scary to work with people in such a deep connected capacity.
Well, I think one of the things I've started to recognize is that the more transparent I am around my own fears and limiting beliefs, that really supports my clients.
Perfect.
And that also includes like when I'm working with teachers, like, it's scary when classroom management is awful, or that you've tried all these positive things and it's not working. And, how can you just sort of keep at it and stay sort of on that course of wanting to do positive discipline and really supporting kids and thriving, not, taking their recess away, but really catching them being good. Right. Yeah. And I didn't always do that perfect. Right. And I get to share that when I'm working with teachers. Like, I don't have to be perfect to be a coach. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I don't think humans have to be perfect to be human. Right.
Oh, and I totally used to think that I did.
Right.
And that's why I really appreciate you saying that.
And I think I still do at times. And that's why I continue to do the work, is that I'm very hard on myself.
Although there are areas where I'm all about alignment and like walking your talk, handling your business, like keeping it real. What I have issues with, though, is someone who specializes in something that they don't practice themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's where, when I've seen, for example, relationship coaches that have horrible relationship histories or currently horrible, abusive, unhealthy relationships. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff.
Can I push back on that a little
Sure,
bit? Okay.
Please.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely.
All right. So I will say.
But I also know that we often teach what we need to learn most.
Exactly. And I think that can happen. Like, I tend to be someone that I can appear very confident. I can come out and say, yeah, sure, I'll do a radio show. Why not? Right? Yeah. I'll go present in Amsterdam in front of a bunch of teachers from Europe. Why not? Right? I'll say yes to these things. Now, inside, it's, oh my gosh, they're not going to like me. I'm a fraud. I'm a failure. What am I thinking? Why would I ever think of doing this? Now, if I share that out loud, there's probably, chances are, people in that audience who feel the same way. And they're thinking, wow, if she feels insecure and yet she's able to come up and talk about confidence, then maybe I can start acting as if I'm confident and move my story forward.
Sure.
Right? So going back to the relationship idea, when someone has gone through terrible relationships, they get to keep learning what they ideally could have done different.
And then they could be great coaches if they've come out of them and overcome them.
And and they're conscious of what happened.
But
and
if they're still currently in.
Yeah, then that's kind of.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about, walking your talk. Because I specialize in addiction and codependency. Why? Because I had a really bad addiction and was severely codependent.
Right.
Do I still have to keep that in check? Of course. Does that make me potentially a better coach because I know how to watch that stuff? Maybe. But if I was still using like crazy, I'd be a total codependent jerk.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
I totally get that.
It's the current cohesiveness, I suppose. Thank you for clarifying, though, because I could have sounded like a total jerk if you wouldn't have clarified.
I don't think you can sound like a jerk, Jen.
Are you kidding me?
Really?
Oh, my mom's probably laughing so hard right now.
Really?
Oh yeah. She thought I was mean to Mickey the other week.
Oh.
Yeah, totally was.
I listened to the whole show. I thought you sounded really nice.
You hear that, Mom? Not everyone thinks I'm mean and evil. Okay. Well, I don't know. I think a lot of people sometimes take some of my edgy humor as a little bit overly intense and jerk.
Well, I think
jerk-like.
Mickey can handle it.
Oh, Mickey can. Yeah. But if anyone else doesn't like my jerk side, then they don't need to listen to my show. That's kind of where I'm at. Let's keep it real.
Right? Keep it real. Absolutely. Well, I think for me too, like that voice of not being good enough, that often comes out in my music.
Yep.
And I remember like my friend Chris, who I do music with, will often go, is it another sad song? Have you created another sad song about how your relationships haven't worked out?
But you know, that's how we express ourselves sometimes. Yeah.
So then I started working on like, how can I create some songs that are a little bit different?
Yeah.
And can I stretch myself to doing something different? Like the first song you played, Sayings, that's actually a song that's completely made up of idioms, and it had no sense at all, actually. And yet you can interpret what you want from it, right? And so it was basically like time is running out. I mean, that's a cliche, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I can't remember the words to my own song. I'd have to hear it again. But it's all idioms. And I think sometimes it's like, why not give yourself a challenge of just saying yes to something? Like, I'm going to try to create a song that has nothing to do with failed relationships, constructed from idioms, and then guess what? As a result, it actually sounds like it's about a failed relationship. So there it goes.
Huh. Oh, how our subconscious works on us. No, I'm just kidding.
It's crazy.
So then something else that you just brought up too was when you are, I'm going to use the terminology like feeling small.
Yeah.
Then I really appreciate how you mentioned that you utilize your resources. Basically, like you call on the people that can support you and you call on the people to lift you up. And that's something that I've talked about previously that I also just want to emphasize again as being so important, because when we do experience really hard things or trauma or challenges, it really is so important to have a few things in your toolbox that you can utilize to help yourself bounce back, to help yourself process, to help yourself deal with or recover from something challenging, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, had I not done the post-trauma therapy, and I without naming the person, I want to say that this was a therapist who happened to see some of the news shows, and I had been interviewed after the tsunami, and she knew my mother. So she called my mother and said, you know, Barbara, I've already donated a ton of money to the relief efforts, and I still want to give back. I would love to donate some counseling to your daughter.
Wow.
I think she has post-trauma, and you know, how could she not?
Yeah.
And it was because of doing the work with this wonderful therapist that, you know, I got to see that, you know, survivor guilt is not living the life that you want to live. And it's totally been the beginning of this whole journey. Had it not been for her and reaching out for support, recognizing that I need support, right? Recognizing that I can't do all this by myself, getting that support, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. Right.
Wow.
So shout out to her.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then I think in terms of the improv work now, like I have this amazing community. I mean, there's something called the Applied Improv Network. People can look it up, and it's really practitioners that all apply improv in some other form besides performance. And so, for example, in the last training, like a big shout out to Chris Sams. He is amazing. He's in San Francisco. He has his own company, does the kind of work that I do. And he was such a support to me in developing and supporting the client that we just worked with.
Wow.
You know, I mean, I do believe it's not, you don't have to be in isolation in anything that you do.
Right.
In anything.
Right. Well, and people need people. You know, I say that a lot, but it's so true. You know, as a species, there's so much research around it if you want to argue it, you know. I'm not saying that we're all a bunch of social butterflies, but what I am saying is humans need humans. You know, you look at the human species, and when a baby's born, we are one of the few species that literally a baby cannot survive without another human supporting it, period. You can't just leave a baby on a couch for 3 weeks and expect it to fend for itself and be okay.
No, I've left my puppy at home today. I have a puppy now, and I was like, should I bring the puppy to the interview? Because I didn't want to leave her at home. But I think she'll be okay for a couple hours.
I think so. But I think that it's important for us to just recognize simply that people need people, you know, on a deep level. And there's even research supporting that people that have really healthier and more longevity in their lives are the people that have strong social connections on, especially on the tail end of their lives as well, that stay in that social connectedness. So I just think it's important to recognize that, especially when we're utilizing our resources to make sure we have support, that we can bounce back, that we can embrace resilience after something challenging's happened. One of those important resources is having our people we can call on,
And I think it's about also making it somewhat of a habit. So I'll say that years ago when I started to build my own community and really learn that reaching out for help was essential, I made it a daily practice to call people, even if I wasn't in crisis, so that it was a habit of reaching out. And friends will tell me, I have a really great friend, Alice, who's in town right now from Bali, and she'll say, you have been so amazing at staying in touch.
Wow.
To me, it's one of the most important parts of relationship is consistency. And that way, if I am feeling like I need support at some time, I don't feel as awkward calling. It's like,
Sure.
oh, I haven't heard from you for days and now you're calling me for help, right? Or for months or years.
Sure.
And therefore, if you have this relationship where you're connecting both positively, like when good things are happening, then it feels easy when things aren't going well. You feel like you can call, or if you need support. So I think making it a habit is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And nurturing our relationships, man. Yeah. Well, then to kind of, time flies when you're having fun. We still have a good 20 minutes though.
Cool.
Easy.
Maybe we can do another song if there's time.
If you'd like to.
Yeah.
Did you want to also mention, I know that you previously mentioned a little bit about, I believe that book you wrote to prove that you knew what you're talking about,
Reading
right?
and Writing Come Alive. Yeah.
I love that.
That was the one for teachers.
Okay.
Yeah. And then what happened was I started to work with individual clients and business clients, and I realized the Reading and Writing Come Alive is probably not the best book for a corporation or for an executive. I mean,
Weird.
One could argue.
The pictures are great, though. So it could be.
Yeah, it was
could be.
illustrated by this great artist, Rich Sigberman, and it's a beautiful cover that he created for me. But yeah, I think probably not the best.
Yeah.
So I was working with a client, and I was thinking about, well, what kind of book would be useful for my clients? And I realized maybe a book that had all the different improv exercises and how you might either play it alone, either by journaling or setting a timer and doing some of the exercises, or you could obviously play with a friend or a partner. And so I ended up with a book called Executive Presence Improv Style.
Cool.
And the essence of the book is this idea that I'm not an image consultant. I don't really care what you wear.
Yeah.
I want to know, though, that you feel confident from the inside out. I think if we can feel confident from the inside out,
and
we
you
can
exude that energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And put that energy out there. So I'll share a little story with you. When I first started my business, which I finally filed my DBA in 2011, and I thought, okay, well, yay, I've started a business. Now what? I don't know what to do. And I had a friend, and she invited me to go to this training for the weekend. It was like a business training. It was actually held by Katarina Rondo, who's awesome, and is a speaker summit. And I thought, okay, I'll go to this speaker summit and learn how to, leverage my business through public speaking. Now, as a teacher, when you go to any kind of staff development, you wear jeans and flip-flops if you're dressing up.
Wow.
I mean, you don't dress up for professional development. I mean, this is after hours, right?
Okay.
So this was a weekend, so I put on some jeans. I had a little peasant shirt on. I had a shawl and then my sandals, and I show up at this hotel for a business training, and I walk into the room and everyone is dressed up. I mean, it's like bling, 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 like jewelry, hairspray, suits.
Ugh.
And I want to run.
Yeah,
I mean, I am so not dressed for this occasion. And it was 5 to 9. It was starting at 9 o'clock, and I thought I have a choice. I can run and try to find a suit at 5 to 9 in the morning, or I can walk in there and just be me.
Yeah.
And I ended up walking in, and I not only was just me, but I presented that day. I actually led the group in some improv. And the next day, a couple more people showed up in jeans, but I showed up in a suit. And what I learned from that experience is that, sometimes image is important, but it's more important to feel like what you have inside is worth sharing.
Right.
And that I've started to really believe in my life. And so this book really is just a series of exercises that help my clients do the work we do one-to-one when we're working together. They can do it on their own.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. I think I've actually been in that position before where I'm like, oh, whoops.
Wrong outfit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I tend to be on the more cash side too. So it's like, gosh. Yeah. I'm definitely one of those girls that tries to dress up jeans a lot.
Yeah.
The
other thing I was thinking when we were talking about doing this interview is the idea that, trauma is self-defined. Trauma can be self-defined. Now, a tsunami, not everyone has gone through a tsunami, right? But everyone has their own personal tsunamis.
Yeah.
It could be a breakup. It could be a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
And to me, like, you know, again, I wasn't even in the thickest part of the tsunami, and yet it caused, of course, trauma for me, right? But the trauma probably even started before. I had gone through a divorce, right? So it was a series of events. So I think it's about recognizing that, one, you know, we get to define our own trauma, but more importantly, we get to define where we go with that. And I think you said that at the beginning, like, you know, what do we do with our trauma or challenge?
Yes.
Do we
how do we gain
hang out in
strength from
there?
these struggles?
Right.
Yeah.
Do we hang in there? And I'm a good complainer, trust me. A lot of my friends know, and my mother especially, like, oh my God, honey, you're complaining again. You know, so I can stay in that place, or I can think about what's the solution? How, again, do I move the story forward?
Yeah.
In a positive way. We talk in improv about being happy, healthy, positive.
Yeah.
And a lot of new improvisers will always say, no, I don't know how to do that. Like, you're the doctor. No, I'm not a doctor. No, you are a doctor.
Yeah.
So if it's an improv scene, right?
Yes.
How do you actually say yes to things?
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, I just really appreciate you saying that, because it's absolutely true, you know, that we all, the way that we relate to things, I mean, okay, I'm going to backpedal a second. I'm trying to think of if I did an interview on this recently or not, or if it's just something I talk about a lot. But the matter and the importance of perception, you know, and how we perceive things, and the whole concept around what law enforcement is very aware of, which is when there's a car accident, you can ask 10 people that were all on the street, and they're all going to have very different stories. Simple as that, you know, because we see things that we, for some reason, grasp onto, or connect to, or resonate with, or just perceive for whatever reason, usually based upon past experience, you know, like maybe we noticed the color of the car because it's the same color as our car, you know, and that's something that we clung to because of that reason, you know, or maybe whatever other details. But when it comes to the concepts of trauma, it's so fascinating to really look at how different people are affected by different things, and how different trauma affects different people as well, and how someone can go through something what we might think is being so incredibly severe, but still be able to have this resilience and this ability to let go and accept and forgive. But then on the other hand, someone can go through comparatively, let's say, something more minor, which I hate to use that term, but I mean, I don't know what else to say, and are severely, severely affected by it, you know? And I think that it's one of those things where just having compassion, I think, for other humans, and understanding that we all have a story, we all have experiences, and we all have been affected by different things. And it's not really our place or our right to try and judge, like, that's all that happened to you and you're tripping on it.
Right,
you know, that's
right.
not for us, you know. We can support and empower them to make sure they do their right healing work, you know, because everybody's healing work is going to be different, look different. And I'm all about, I think we're very fortunate in our society to have as many healing professionals and practitioners as we do. I mean, man, there's so many different types of therapy nowadays. You know, there's the typical talk therapy and psychotherapy. There's now somatic experiencing, which I totally think is great. Art therapy, you know, so many different types of therapy out there. And then there's also like coaching out there, you know, and it's so many different realms as well. Oh my goodness. And, you know, being able to see consultants and being able to go do activities and be parts of groups, like, oh my gosh. Right. And what I'm a big proponent of is figuring out what works for you. You know, my passion is around individualism and resilience, and being able to say, hey, what do I need to feel whole, to feel solid, to feel healed, potentially, you know? And then in that healing, how can I maybe give back to others in a way that then supports them in their healing, perhaps in something that's similar to what I've been through?
Yeah, I love that what you're saying. It made me think of this idea of like kind of putting a challenge out to the listeners of, you know, thinking about whatever they're going through right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever you're going through right now, is to make a different list, a list of some of the things you'd actually like to go through. You know, what are the things on your list? Like, I made my list, right? I had my 3 things.
Yeah.
You know, and right now I'm in the process of the 3rd thing and loving it.
Yeah.
You know, what are some things? It's sort of like the bucket list. What are things that you haven't done yet that you absolutely want to do? And see what is possible. There's a great improv exercise that, I was taught in an improv class, but then it was really sort of brought home to me by Sue Walden, who's an amazing applied improviser. And what she does is, for example, it's called Yes and What I Like About That. So you and I, Jen, we're planning something. Let's plan a party, all right?
Okay.
So Jen, throw out one idea about the party.
It's going to have a piñata.
Yes. You know what I like about that idea is a piñata brings everybody together. And what we can do is we can fill the piñata with like special tickets to different shows. And you're going to say, yes.
Oh,
what
yes.
I like about that idea.
And what I like about that is we can also beat on the piñata and get any aggression that we have out and it still have fun stuff come out of it.
Oh, what I like about that is that the energy and excitement about beating this piñata, it's just going to be crazy.
So crazy.
Right. So what you do is you take that exercise and you can actually do it by yourself. So I said, I want to have a business where I combine my love of performance and creativity and have my master's of education have some relevance. Oh, what I like about that idea, so I'm doing this with myself, what I like about that idea is that it allows me to be creative, to get that performance thing I love to do out there, and I get to still teach others. So I get to keep saying yes to my own idea and really be specific about what I'm liking about my ideas. So I encourage the listeners, make that list of things that you want to do and plan it. See if you can brainstorm.
Okay, so then it would be around things they want to do and taking it deeper.
Right, take it deeper.
What I like about that, okay.
And spend just a few minutes brainstorming it without limits of gravity or finance.
Remember that. Yeah,
no gravity, no finance.
Yeah,
how far out can you go where the sky is the limit? And I'll give you an example. I was working with a nonprofit board and they were planning a retreat for their staff. And so what we did is we played this yes and game, right, for just a few minutes, and we generated this massive list of ideas of where this retreat should be and how they should do it. And there was no limit on budget, and they wanted to do it at a very famous place, and they wanted to hold the whole retreat there. Now, there'd be no way financially for them to do that. However, they were able to do a field trip there. So as part of the week-long retreat, they did a 2-hour trip to this place.
How cool.
So when you take what's possible and really go big with it, you can then engage, as Sue Walden says, your left brain, your problem solver, problem spotter, to then identify how to make it happen. But if you don't engage your right brain, the creative what's possible side of your brain, you will never get very far because you'll always be just finding problems where maybe there doesn't need to be a problem. So again, what's possible
where there doesn't need to be a
impossible.
problem. Well, sometimes we need to be aware of that, because sometimes our society gets a little bit addicted to the drama, and especially, unfortunately, if we've been used to having a lot of challenging things happen, then sometimes we almost expect it. So sometimes just that simplicity of not expecting more bad, and being more so aware of hey, more, maybe some good stuff's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. And so improv, it's just a mindset. It's a mindset. And, in my case, I apply it in various places, but it's really teaching people to have a different mindset to approach a problem. Or to not even see it as a problem. Right.
Yeah. But as a really interesting learning experience, maybe, and that's sometimes the challenge is to go back to the entire topic and title of our show, living your dream by taking trauma to triumph. I mean, I absolutely believe for myself and a lot of the people that I'm close to, not only personally and professionally, but clients that I've worked with, it absolutely has been the most challenging events that they endured that helps shape and create them into the person that they are today. Whether it's help them to define their values, help them to stand up more for what they believe in, help them to figure out where they want to serve, because I feel like we all serve in some capacity no matter what we do. And if we're not, we should be, as humans. And I mean, even that's just to clarify, I don't mean everyone needs to be volunteering 20 hours a week. I mean, if you feel compelled and you're walking down the street and you see, a homeless person and you feel compelled to go in there and buy them a sandwich, that's serving, So serving in our own ways. And I just really want to touch on that everybody has a story and everyone also, though, has the ability to, I hope, and would encourage people to allow themselves to gain strength from the struggles that they may have been through. Simple as that. Absolutely. And you touched on something with the idea of serving others. One of the other tenets of improv is to make your partner look good. And if we think of, people that we come in contact on a daily basis as being our partners, the cashier at the grocery store, the homeless person, what can we do in that moment to make them look good? Right, to prop them up, to raise their status. Right. So I think that's the other thing I've really loved about improv is people have done that with me, and that's felt really great, and I get to do that for others. Help them feel brilliant. I love it. All right. So as we start to close with Lisa Safran, So I'm just so grateful that you're here today.
Aw, thanks so much. It's really fun. I've done several interviews before, but never in person. And I encourage anyone that does radio shows to do it in person. It was so much fun to be able to look at you.
See, I told you to trust me.
Totally.
I said, girl,
yes, you did.
I said, I can do it over the phone or Skype, but I highly encourage you to come be in studio with me.
I'm so happy to have done this in person and
Cool.
hang out with you. I mean, it feels like we're just hanging out.
Yeah, except we're making people listen to us if they're on the radio. If they're listening, then they're stuck with us. Yeah, it's like having a captive audience that we don't even know exists, right?
Exactly.
I always joke that good thing there's not a video camera in here because I talk with my hands, and I'm waving all over the place, and half the time I don't have makeup on.
I brought makeup because I thought, oh my gosh, what if there's a camera?
So funny. I love it. Cool. So just to kind of recap a little bit of what we talked about, trauma to triumph. Okay. Sounds a little crazy. Sounds a little out there, trauma to triumph. But what we're really trying to get at is the ability for people to bounce back, the ability for people to make the most of what they've been through and what they've experienced. And I really appreciate you sharing your story today, about the tsunami in 2004. And is that the right year?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And how trauma can be different to different people and impact us differently, because there's natural disasters that, can cause trauma for people, absolutely. But then there's also trauma that absolutely comes from a personal event, some form of abuse maybe, or maybe an accident or something like that. And just really validating for people, hey, sometimes we're going to go through stuff and we're going to relate to it differently, but we absolutely always have the capacity to try and either be aware of our perception of the event and or allow ourselves to figure out a way to try and heal, in the way that we need as individuals. And that's what I want to emphasize most, is the importance of knowing yourself and knowing what you need to really move forward, heal, and allow yourself to feel empowered. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important for people to recognize, again, that they get to define for themselves what their trauma is and find solutions, and that they building a community of resources so that they don't have to do it alone is also essential.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was thinking too, trauma, again, like it can be anything. Like if you're thinking in businesses, it could be change management. That creates trauma, right? Yeah. In schools, having more kids in the classroom, trauma, right? And so how do we handle that? Do we complain in the staff room about having yet another kid who's entered our class? I can say I did at times.
Sure.
Or do we find creative solutions so that we make that child feel welcome?
Sure.
Again, this is going back to the relationship coaching that, you don't want to be a relationship coach if you're doing it really poorly yourself. And at times, I wasn't a perfect teacher.
Yeah.
Yet I always knew that one of my main goals was to facilitate a joy of learning and to help kids feel part of. And that goes back again to this idea of feeling part of. On that day on the beach, I didn't feel part of. How can you not feel part of a natural disaster? And today I feel part of so many different communities.
Yeah.
Ranging from BNI to more of a spiritual community to improvisers that I'm part of their community and our community, and connecting with people like you, Jen. So, it's great.
We're very fortunate.
Be part of community.
That's right.
That's
right.
it.
All right. It is now time to say goodbye. So for anyone just joining us, you just missed a pretty darn good interview. Anywho, Lisa, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jen.
So fun.
Really fun.
Yeah. As fun as talking about trauma can be,
right.
But we make it fun, I guess. Weird.
Yeah. Well, you and I can laugh about everything.
That's true. That's kind of how we roll. Can you just let listeners know if they want to just hear more about what you do or where to contact you for more info?
So my website, www.improvconsultants.com. And you can also just give me a call, 415-484-5871. Would love to hear from you.
Perfect.
Thanks again, Jen.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So with that, just thank you all for listening to Jen Julius, Inspiration and Information. And for more information about me, you can go to jenjulius.com or facebook.com/JenJuliusCoaching.